بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Asalaamu Alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallillahumma ala Sayyidina Muhammad an-Nabi al-Umi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim tasliman kathira. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم إنا نسألك العافية اللهم إنا نسألك العافية اللهم إنا نسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة اللهم إنا نسألك التوفيق والإخلاص ودوام النعمة وحسن الختام وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings that we're experiencing right now and the blessings that we've experienced our entire lives. And we ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us, to send blessings and peace upon the best of creation, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and his followers and companions. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send mercy and tranquility to this gathering and to all of the gatherings of the Muslims around the world, and that Allah Ta'ala protect the Muslims and give the Ummah ease from the tribulations that are afflicting the Ummah and for all of humanity. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad and Nabi al-Umi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So, alhamdulillah, we continue in our reading of the Jawhara. And inshallah, what I was thinking is, because we're a bit behind, so we can first read through the lines that we're supposed to cover today, which are lines 1 through 14, in a very sort of a basic way, with the basic explanation for terms and the meanings. And then inshallah, we can kind of return and see if any thoughts that we want to reflect on together from earlier lines, so that way we don't cause the course to fall behind. So last time we talked about the basmala and the hamdulillah, so the invoking Allah's name, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, starting in the name of Allah, as well as praise for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillahi ala silatihi. And one of the things that, just to remind ourselves about shukr, is that one of the things Imam al-Ghazali talks about, rahimahullah, in his Ihya al-Din, is that there's an implicit contradiction in shukr, because the definition of shukr is to express gratitude towards the benefactor in a way that the benefactor would benefit somehow. Right? In creation, when we thank each other, there's a type of benefit that the giver receives. But the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that nothing benefits Him. He is the one that benefits everything else. He is an-nafi', the creator of benefit. So Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he says that how can we reconcile shukr vis-a-vis the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another problem, logical problem in shukr, is that gratitude itself is a blessing from Allah. Gratitude itself is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is the one that gives tawfiq. And tawfiq is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates what He loves in the servant. When Allah creates in the servant what He loves subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver of tawfiq, and He's the one that gives shukr to the servant, He inspires and creates shukr in the servant, then what exactly is going on? And so Imam Ghazali cites as an example that Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, that he was once making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says that he was expressing his gratitude to Allah, and at one point he says, Ya Allah, how can I give you gratitude when my very gratitude is a blessing from you? How can I give you gratitude when my very gratitude is a blessing from you? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him, Ya Dawood, al-an qad shakartani. That, O Dawood, now you have truly shown me gratitude. Ya Dawood al-an qad shakartani, now at this point you have truly shown me gratitude. That the reality of gratitude for those that are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a recognition that we cannot show gratitude. Right? The reality of shukr to those that are closest to Allah is a recognition that it's really impossible. And so recognizing our inability is one of the highest forms of shukr. Just recognizing our inability, because it's just too much. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ, if you try to count one blessing, ni'mat, singular. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ, if you try to count one blessing of Allah, لَا تُحْصُوهَا, you cannot enumerate everything that is entailed therein. And so, and then Imam Ghazali actually mentions that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises a servant for their gratitude and says, ni'mal abd, what a great servant of mine. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ni'mal abd, what a great servant of mine, for their gratitude, that Imam Ghazali argues that in reality Allah is simply, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah, inshallah, qabul, Allah is accepting, inshallah, that the reality of Allah's praise for the grateful servant is really a praise of His tawfiq. When Allah says ni'mal abd, the reality of Allah's praise for the grateful servant is really a praise of His tawfiq. Because what part of the abd does Allah love when He says ni'mal abd? It's what He gives of ibadah, what He gives of His love, of what He loves, the good deeds and the good states that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. And so the reality of ni'mal abd is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising His own tawfiq that He gives the servant. And so Imam Ghazali argues that if we really reflect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only the one being thanked, but He is the one that is thanking. That it's really between Allah and Himself, and the servant is merely a vessel by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating these good deeds. And it's very profound. And just to see if there's any, and this is one of the highest levels that we can attain, inshallah, is that any good that Allah creates on our hands, that we just see it as coming from Allah and going back to Allah. Any good that Allah Ta'ala creates on our hands, or any state or anything on the tongue that's beneficial, we see it as from Allah and going back to Allah, and that really we have it wasn't our own doing in that sense. And this is not to deny that the human being has his kasb, he earns his good deeds, will be rewarded, but the reality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising what He Himself grants the servant. So then ثم سلام الله مع صلاته على نبي جاء بالتوحيد وقد خلى الدين عن التوحيد. So if we reflect now on the salawat upon the Prophet ﷺ, and that our salawat is asking Allah to send blessings and peace upon him ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, that Allah and the angels, that Allah Himself and His angels send blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ. And that the commentators mention that the meaning of salat from Allah is rahmah plus ta'zeem. It's rahmah conjoined with ta'zeem. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His salat on the Prophet ﷺ is mercy conjoined with veneration. Mercy conjoined with veneration. But that our teachers teach us that the reality of our salawat is again tawfiq. The reality of our salawat is again tawfiq. That when we send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, Allah is the one that gives us the tawfiq to do that. And so in reality, when we send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, it still goes back to inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. That Allah is the one inspiring us to send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, so it's still Allah sending the salat on the Prophet ﷺ. And that we are just honored to be a vessel by which this happens. That it's ultimately a reflection of Allah's love for the Prophet ﷺ. And we're just honored to be a part of that relationship. And so, ثم سلام الله مع صلاته على نبي جاء بالتوحيد, upon the Nabi. And the Nabi in Arabic has two possible derivations, that one of them comes from naba, which is news, because the Prophet ﷺ, every prophet brings a news. It's on the pattern fa'il, which can either mean the doer or the object of an action. So he's either the one that brings the news, عَمَّا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ, about what are they asking about this great news, this tremendous news. Or he is the one that it was foretold about, that he was the one that the news was about, because every prophet before him sallallahu alaihi wasallam told about the coming of the last prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the other possible derivation of the word nabi is from nabwa, which is an elevated plane, an elevated plane. So the nabwa has to do with the elevation, and so the nabi, again, it's either the doer or the recipient. And so the doer, that he elevates others, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he elevates those that follow him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that by following him we are elevated, our rank is increased. And so he is elevating us in our following his way. And then he is also elevated because Allah says, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ, that we have elevated your remembrance, we have raised your remembrance. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises the rank of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the things Imam al-Ghazali also mentions is that, and this will come up later in the text inshallah, but understanding, because one of the wajib, one of the necessary attributes of all prophets is what's called the isma, is that they're free of sin. And so how do we then reconcile that with the many narrations, whether there's verses in the Quran or the ahadith in which the Prophet ﷺ is seeking forgiveness or is commanded to seek forgiveness. And there's a hadith that says, إِنَّهُ لَيُغَانُ عَلَى قَلْبِي, that verily there is this haze that covers my heart, and because of that I seek forgiveness 70 to 100 times a day. Now, how do we understand these ahadith vis-a-vis our belief that he is infallible, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And that one of the things Imam al-Ghazali, the way he explains it, rahimahullah ta'ala, is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was commanded waqtarib, and draw near to your Lord. The Quran commands him waqtarib, and draw near to your Lord. And so that Imam Ghazali says that at every moment his rank was getting higher and higher. He was drawing near to his Lord in his spiritual rank, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at every single moment. And that this is the elevation now. The word Nabi is the one that is elevated. And so at every moment he's getting closer to Allah and gaining a higher rank at every single moment. And so Imam Ghazali says that at each new moment and the new rank that he is at, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he looks back at where he was in the previous moment, he sees it as falling short. That where he just wasn't good enough, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so at each moment, as he is drawing nearer to Allah and ascending in his rank, when he reflects back on where he was in the previous moment, it's a haze over his blessed heart, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the way the scholars have reconciled the fact that we assert that one of the necessary attributes of the prophets is isma, is being infallible, vis-a-vis the fact that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that he seeks forgiveness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So ala nabiyyin ja bit Tawheed. And what can we say about the rank of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Quran that had we sent it down on mountains, they would have exploded. Right? Had we sent the Quran down on mountains, they would have exploded. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that Jibreel alayhi salam nazzalahu ala qalbik, that Jibreel alayhi salam sends it down upon your heart. And so that really the only place in the cosmos that could handle just the weightiness, qawlan thaqila, that the Quran is a weighty word. It's very heavy, and that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that on a cold day when the Quran would descend upon him, his blessed head, sweat would come down on a cold day just because of the pressure. There's narrations that even a companion would be sitting next to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, revelation would come, and he said that the pressure just that he felt of his leg under the knee of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as if it would come off almost. It was just overwhelming pressure when the Quran was descending, that nothing else in the cosmos could handle it, but except nazzalahu ala qalbik, the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just reflecting as to his rank, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the fact that Allah says that verily Allah is sending salawat on him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then all of the angels, that at every moment Allah and the angels are sending salawat on him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we get to share in that blessed occasion. Really, that we have the honor. It's honoring us. It's really the honor is for us to be able to say Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. and that we should inshallah try to have, a daily amount of salawat that we do, a daily wird, if you will, of just sending blessings, just out of shukr for Him. It starts with praise be to Allah, shukr to Allah, but then He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man lam yashkur nas lam yashkurillah. In the hadith in Tirmidhi, man lam yashkur nas lam yashkurillah. Whoever doesn't thank other people has not thanked Allah. That part of shukr to Allah is to thank the means in the world, in our fellow human beings that bring us good. And so who has brought us more good amongst humanity than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And so out of shukr to him, just to invoke blessings and peace upon him. And that our mother Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, she said, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, that his character was the Qur'an. What does that mean? Seriously, how can we understand that? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily Allah loves this type of people. Allah loves the muttaqeen. Allah loves the muhsineen. Allah loves the people, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah loves the people of tawakkul. Allah loves the people. Anytime Allah Ta'ala mentions that He loves a certain people with a certain virtue, with a certain spiritual trait that they have, that you could reword that in your mind to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all those that follow him in tawakkul. Allah loves the Prophet ﷺ and also all those that follow him in taqwa. Allah loves the Prophet ﷺ and all those that follow him in ihsan. And if the Qur'an is calling us to every good virtue, if the Qur'an is calling us to every single good virtue, and He sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the embodiment of all those virtues, and He is the Imam, He is the master of all those virtues, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily you are ala. Ala means to be on top of something. Like I say in Arabic, al-qalam ala tawila. The pen is on top of the table. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He didn't just say that you have these traits. He says you are upon a vast ethos of good character, a vast ethos of virtue, that you have mastered and conquered every single virtue that exists, every single virtue that the Qur'an calls us to. And that in that sense, the Qur'an, every time Allah praises a group, He's primarily praising His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam first and foremost, because He's the Imam of all of those traits, and then all those that follow Him sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that way. And so to understand, how can we understand that? Qadi Iyad, in his Shifa, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is as-sirat al-mustaqim, that he is the straight path sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And our mother Aisha expressed it, kana khuluquhu al-Qur'an, that his character was the Qur'an. So, there's an interesting narration in Bukhari when the beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his last few moments, when he came out and he saw Abu Bakr, Allah be pleased with him, leading the prayer. We all know the narration that Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Allah be pleased with him, that he took a step back to allow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come lead, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him an ishara to go ahead and stay. That Sayyidina Anas, he's the one that narrates this hadith. It's in Sahih Bukhari. When he describes the Prophet ﷺ, he says, كَأَنَّ وَجْهَهُ وَرَقَةُ الْمُصْحَفِ. He says, كَأَنَّ وَجْهَهُ وَرَقَةُ الْمُصْحَفِ. He says, it's as if his face was a page of the Qur'an. That's how he described him. It's as if his face, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a page of the Qur'an, of the Mus'haf. And he was literally the full embodiment of everything good that the Qur'an talks about, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, really. And then his shafa'ah, the Isra wal Mi'raj, we can't fathom the rank that entails, that he could cross the Sidrat al-Muntaha, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jibreel alayhi salam's like, I have to stop. If I cross this, I'll be burnt. This is only for one person. And that in our aqidah, that we actually believe that, and it'll come up inshallah, that he's the one instance of anyone in this dunya getting the ru'ya, getting the vision of Allah. That inshallah in the Akhira, we believe that all the believers in paradise will get the ru'ya, the beatific vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's in the Akhira for all of the believers inshallah, all of us. In this life, only one person, right? The best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that His universal mercy, that on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, that He has the Shafa'atul Udma, He has the greatest intercession, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. and that he intercedes. Everyone, the people go to every single prophet and they say nafsi, nafsi. Some of the ulama take ishara that the fact that the group of people seeking intercession go to every single prophet first, some of the ulama take ishara that this is an indication that it's the communities of those prophets as well. The believers of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, the believers of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, the believers of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, all of the communities of believers from all the previous prophets alayhi salam, the fact that they're going to those prophets, some of the ulama derive this lesson, this meaning is that it's the shafa'ah, it's the intercession, not just for our ummah, that the Prophet ﷺ intercedes for every believer. He intercedes for every single believer. And for him, just imagine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's really amazing. Allah doesn't need any means. Whether in this life or the next, Allah doesn't need any sabab. But it's a sunnah, the way He creates is that there's asbab, there's means. Imagine salvation itself, going to paradise. Allah made a sabab. Allah could have simply said, I forgive you, go. But Allah He made a means. And the means is Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For people to go to eternal pleasure, the means of that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is his rank? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. We have raised your rank. And his name, his name is the man of praise. His name, his two names in the Quran, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahmad, right? His two primary names. Muhammad, the one that is praised so much, the one that is praised so much, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Ahmad, the one that praises the most, because he praises Allah the most, and because of his rank, the whole universe is singing his praise, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. So there's a lot, mashallah, just reflecting on him, and really, inshallah, trying to realize who he is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Imam al-Qani, he says, ala nabiyyin ja bit-Tawheed wa qad khala ad-dinu an at-Tawheed. So upon a prophet who brought Tawheed at a time when religion was lacking Tawheed, right? At a time when religion was lacking Tawheed. So, and we'll discuss, inshallah, the Ahl al-Fatra. So فَأَرْشَدَ الْخَلْقِ لِدِينِ الْحَقِّ. So who directed people to the religion of the real, and who directed people to the religion of the real, دين الحق, بِسَيْفِهِ وَهَدِيهِ لِلْحَقِّ, and with both authority and his guidance to reality, with both authority and his guidance to reality. And inshallah, if we have time at the end, I want to talk a little bit about reality. Muhammadu al-Aqib li rusli rabbihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa hizbihi. And so his blessed name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-Aqib, there's a hadith where he said, Ana al-Aqib fala nabiyya ba'di, that I am the Aqib is the khatam, the seal or the final one, and so there's no prophet after me, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is essential, that the deen al-haq, in the previous line, this religion of truth, that this is the final expression of Tawheed in the world, and this is the final revelation, and that that Islam is the nasikh, it abrogates all the previous dispensations, and that the Quran abrogates all the previous scriptures, and that there will be no more revelation after this, and no more prophets after this. So this is qat'i, this is ma'lum min ad-din bid-darur, it's necessarily known of the religion. So he is al-Aqib, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, li rusli rabbihi, for all of the messengers and prophets of his Lord, wa alihi wa sahbihi wa hizbihi, and upon his family, companions, and party. So al in Arabic can be translated as family or folk. And they say that, ulama say that in the maqam of zakat, it's the family of the Prophet ﷺ. But in the maqam of dua, in the situation of dua, it's kullu mu'min. It's every single believer, walau asiyan, even if they're sinful. And so when we send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, and we say wa alihi, and upon his al, then we should have that intention, that we are intending not simply his blessed family, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but in fact the entire ummah. And so then we are now directly benefiting from the salawat. is that if the salawat has wa alihi, then inshallah we're all being, the rahmah and all of this is descending upon us. And then sahbihi, his companions. Now the sahabi, a companion, is defined as whoever met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam while believing in him. Whoever met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam while believing in him. And so those are the two main criteria. Some of them said it's whoever sees the Prophet ﷺ while believing in him. But they said, well, there's Ibn Maktoum, there's certain Sahaba that were blind, but they're still Sahaba. And so they said whoever met the Prophet ﷺ while believing in him, and then they die in that state, right? They die in that state. So by those, by merely meeting, by simply meeting him ﷺ with iman in him, a person becomes in the highest rank of this ummah, right? A person becomes in the highest rank of this ummah. And then the hizb, the party, it's any jama'ah, any group that's working on the same, that's of the same, they have the same direction in what they're doing or their belief, then that's called a hizb. And so some said that this is the khawas al-khawas, it's the closest of the companions. That after, so al is the most general, all the believers in the entire ummah of all time until the end of time, even if they're sinful. And then the sahb are just the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And then the hizb are those that were closest to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Others say that hizb is also broad. The entire ummah is from the party of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the obligation of learning the science of Tawheed and the purpose and reason for this poem. So he says, Rahimahullah, وَبَعْدُ فَالْعِلْمُ بِأَصْلِ الدِّينِ مُحَتَّمٌ يَحْتَاجُ لِلتَّبْيِينِ. So, ba'd means, to proceed. Ilm. And ilm is synonymous with ma'rifah in terminology, and it means al-jazm al-mutabiq lil-waqi'. They say it's al-jazm al-mutabiq lil-waqi', which means certainty which corresponds with reality. Certainty which corresponds with reality. So our ilm cannot have doubt. Okay, it has to be certainty. So if it's a 50-50 thing, what's called shak in Arabic, if it's like 75-25, what's called dhan in Arabic, if it's waham, if it's just delusion, these are all they're excluded by ilm. Ilm has to be jazm, and it's mutabiq lil waqi', it corresponds to truth. And muhattamun, so bi-asl din, that of the knowledge of the creedal basis of this religion. So we talked about last time, we mentioned 5 names of the science, and that they are Tawheed. What are they? Someone help me. Ilm al-kalam, aqidah, usul al-din, 5th, fiqh al-akbar. Okay, so usul al-din is one of them. So here, because it's the foundation or basis of the religion, so knowledge of the foundation, the basis of this religion, muhattamun, is a must. Okay, it's a must, it's an obligation. Yahtaju lit-tabyin, it needs clarification, it does need explanation. Lakin min at-tatwili kallat al-himam, unfortunately, lengthy expositions no longer find readers. So tatwil, like before this and similar primers, and you had very multi-volume works in this science, because they had to engage with philosophers, they had to engage with metaphysicians, they had to engage in this kalam, this dialectic, this discourse of back and forth with the different groups that were bringing shubuhat. Okay, and a shubha is an obfuscation or a confusing matter that can confuse the mind of a believer. And so the scholars of kalam, they engaged in this dialectic. So you had very, very, lengthy works that were written in this science, and like the sharh of al-maqasid and the sharh of al-mawaqif. These are each like 4 or 5 volumes long each, and various works by Imam al-Amidi and different. Imam Ahmadi's works are many volumes, and so. That's not, so while that's needed for scholars to use for research and being able to deal with shubuhat, it's not very practical for people like us that just want to learn the foundation, right? And so this is what the Imam is saying, is that لكن من التطويل كلت الهمم, you know, that the himma was less. فصار فيه الاختصار ملتزم, so it became necessary to have abridgments, short, concise primers that really give the zubda, the summarized presentation of what we really need to know. And so he says, وَهَذِهِ أُرُجُوزَةٌ لَقَّبْتُهَا جَوْهَرَةَ التَّوْحِيدِ قَدْ هَذَّبْتُهَا. And so here is a poem in the Rajaz meter that I've entitled. Rajaz is one of the meters. مُسْتَفْعِلٌ 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 مُسْتَفْعِلٌ. So, الحمد لله على صلاته ثم سلام الله مع صلاته على نبي جاء بالتوحيد وقد خلى الدين عن التوحيد فأرشد الخلق لدين الحق بسيفه وهده للحق. هكذا. So هذه أرجوزة, it's a poem in the Rajaz meter, لقبتها, that I've entitled, and a laqab is a title that's honorific. It implies praise. Okay, the laqab implies praise. It's a positive title. Jawhara Tawheed, the precious pearl of divine unity, and we talked about the name and appreciating that how faith is really the greatest jawhara that we have. So it's the jawhara that is Tawheed. قد هذبتها, that I have polished. والله أرجو في القبول نافعا بها مريدا في الثواب طامعا. So, yeah, mashallah. This is a really nice dua, and dua, Ibn Ata'illah, Allah be pleased with him, he says that إذا أطلق لسانك بالطلب فاعلم أنه يريد أن يعطيك. إذا أطلق لسانك بالطلب فاعلم أنه يريد أن يعطيك. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unties the knot of your tongue such that you start asking for something, then realize He wants to give you that thing. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unties the knot of your tongue such that you start asking for something, realize He wants to give you that thing. So some people say, I really want ikhlas. How do I get ikhlas? Well, ask Allah for ikhlas. And the fact that you're making dua for ikhlas is the sign that Allah wants to give you ikhlas. It's really from Him. He's the one that unties the knots for dua. If we want yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then ask Allah for yaqeen. And if you want afiyah, safety, security, health, well-being, then ask Allah for afiyah. And so the fact that Imam Laqani is asking this dua, inshallah, is a sign that Allah ta'ala answers it. So he says, Wallaha arju, and the lafdul jalala, the name Allah, is the, lafdul jalala is the one that he's hoping. It's the direct object of the sentence. Well, but he put it first for the emphasis that Wallah, Allah alone. So when a direct object comes before the verb, you often have there's meaning of emphasis and what's called hasr, which is alone. So, Zaydan darabtu. Normally I would say darabtu Zaydan, I hit Zayd, but that doesn't emphasize Zayd, and I could have hit other people. But if I say Zaydan darabtu, that means Zayd, it's important, and he's the only one I hit, for example. The grammarians like Zayd and hitting with all of their examples. So it's just studying grammar, it's kind of ingrained, but it's not a violent tradition, despite the nonsense that's out there right now. A'udhu billah. We ask Allah for afiyah. So, Wallaha arju fil qabuli nafi'an. So Allah alone do I hope in acceptance. So qabul, qabul is when the good deed ascends up in the heavens, and there's khaza'in, there's treasure chests that store all of the good deeds of the people. And that's why so there's treasure chests that store the good deeds, and there's also treasure chests of provision. So that's why we make dua, it's towards the heavens, it's with those stores of rizq that we ask that Allah sends down from, and then the good deeds that go up, that there's qabul. And qabul is that Allah accepts it and is pleased with it and will reward it. Now raja is hope, and the meaning of hope is to desire something while taking the means. Okay, hope is a positive thing. It's desiring something while taking the means. Whereas, what's called umniya or tama' is to desire something without taking the means, and that's actually blameworthy. So, the hadith says that al-kayyis man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut. وَالْعَاجِزْ مَنْ أَتْبَعَ نَفْسَهُ هَوَاهَا وَتَمَنَّى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْأَمَانِي. So I believe it's in Sunan al-Tirmidhi that al-kayyis man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut, that the intelligent one is the one who lowers, humbles, and subdues his ego. Al-kayyis man dana nafsahu. Dana has all these meanings: to lower, to humble, and to subdue, and to take control of. So the intelligent one is the one that does that to his ego. وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. And then the fruit of that control of the nafs is that they're able to really work for the afterlife. وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. Okay? And that, before completing the hadith, just realizing the delusion of this world. And it's very, it's really nothing. This dunya is the dunya aspect of it is nothing. It's what's done for other than the sake of Allah. The dunya is what's done in this world for other than the sake of Allah. But what's there as a sign, as an ayah, which is the alam, is sacred in that sense. Because it points to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It indicates His presence subhanahu wa ta'ala, His reality. So, we look down on the dunya, i.e. what's done for the sake of the world, not for the sake of God. But the world in and of itself, because of these signs, these ayat, it is special, and we honor the world and we honor creation for that reason. And that's one of the differences that some of our masters mentioned between the nafs and the qalb, is that it's the same faculty, but it's what it's directed towards. And so that, Ibn Ata'ala says that al-kawn dhahiruha ghirra wa batinuha ibra. He says this cosmos, the outward of it is delusion and glitter and distraction, but its inward is ibra, is something to reflect deeply upon. فالنفس تنظر إلى ظاهر غرتها والقلب ينظر إلى باطن عبرتها. That the ego gets distracted by the glitter of its outward and doesn't see meaning, whereas the heart, the qalb, is what can perceive the inner meaning of everything. Okay, the heart is what can perceive the inner meaning of everything. And so the heart can recognize La ilaha illallah, that everything is pointing to its originator, its creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the hadith, to return to the hadith, that al-kayyis man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut, that the intelligent one, according to the Prophet ﷺ, takes control of their ego and then can work for what really matters. See, they take their ibrah, and they can bypass the ghirra. They don't get distracted by the delusionary aspect of the world, and they can take their ibrah of realizing that they want to go towards the one that created everything. وَعَمِلَ لِمَا بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. And so they act for what's coming next. And the Akhira is what gives context to everything. It's the ultimate meaning of everything, right? It's the ultimate meaning of everything. And we have to remember Akhira, that the Prophet ﷺ, in the most difficult times of the seerah, is that he would say, Allahumma la aisha illa aishul akhira. In Sahih al-Bukhari, at the time of the Khandaq, when the 10,000 strong and these ahzab were united, the greatest army that had gathered on the Arabian Peninsula, were impeding on the small community of Medina, and they just had a few days to dig a trench just to be safe from that impending threat. That when he was digging with them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because hope is taking the means. So he is in the trenches with them, literally in the trenches, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, digging with them. And when they can't break the rock, when it's too hard, then they call him, and he breaks the rock, and light shines all the way, and they can see the palaces of different nations, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That he says in that time, Allahumma la aisha illa aishul akhira. Oh Allah, this is not life. True life is what's coming next, and we look forward to that time. And this is this is really like, it's inshallah later in the text we'll talk about the problem of evil and dealing with theodicy, and how do we understand suffering in the world, and how do we understand evil in the world, and how do we understand the fact that earthquakes in Pakistan, and I think today there was a second one, may Allah give afiyah, and then this ridiculous, and I can't even repeat what happened in Kenya. It's just, subhanAllah. You can't. How do you even process that type of tyranny? How do you even process that type of but the only thing, the only consolation to the victim is Allahumma la isha illa ishul akhirah. I believe in another realm, and I believe that you will make everything fair, and that the Prophet ﷺ, he promised that the one that has the most suffering in this life, that they are merely dipped into paradise. He promised us, the one that has the most suffering in this life is merely dipped into paradise, and they come out after that one dip, and they are asked, do you remember any pain? They say, I don't remember any pain. I don't remember any pain. That's the only way we can make sense of this. That's the only way we can make sense of this nonsense. And doesn't mean we don't struggle against it. It doesn't mean that we're quietists. It doesn't mean that we're pacifists. No, we take raja, al-akhd bil asbab. Hope is to take the means. And so we struggle against the tyranny, and we struggle against the nonsense, and we struggle against the injustice. But the heart is saying, Allahumma la isha illa ishul akhirah. Really, that we're looking forward to a day when, everything will make sense, and everyone that suffered will be given bliss beyond eternity, beyond imagination for eternity. This is the context that we have to keep in mind. And so back to the hadith, the al-kayyis, the intelligent one, the one that can perceive these meanings, al-kayyis, the smart one the smart one is not the one that can ace the exam necessarily, seriously. And that's one of the problems is in the West, a lot of us Westerners were raised here, and we think that if we can get a certain GPA, then that means that we're intelligent. And that's a good thing. We should get good GPAs, but that's one of the things I learned when I went to Jordan, alhamdulillah, is that what makes someone special, it wasn't the GPA. So Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad. Al-kayyis man dana nafsahu, that's the intelligent one that has control of their ego. Wa amila lima ba'd al-maut, and then works towards this real meaning to seek, the afterlife, this reality that's going to come. Wal ajiz, but the impotent one with no ability, man atba'a nafsa wa hawaha, that the one he allows his ego to partake of every desire, the one that just lets it go. Ahlan wa sahlan to the nafs. And look at the comparison, look at the meanings of the jawami al-kalim, these universal statements of the Prophet ﷺ, because he compares al-kayyis, the intelligent one, to al-ajiz, the one with no ability, which gives double meaning. That indicates that the intelligent one is the one who is able. The intelligent one is the one that is able. And the ajiz is also a fool. The ajiz is also a fool. So there's implied meanings. So the ajiz is the one that lets go, and then وَتَمَنَّى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْأَمَانِ, and then says, inshallah, Allah will forgive me. They do everything that they want. They have no, effort to rectify their souls, to remove these vices from themselves, to inculcate these virtues. But they say, isn't Allah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? Isn't Allah? That's the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's a fool, and he's unable. He's ajiz. So that's the difference between the raja and just vain hopes, empty hopes. So raja is the first one. Al-kayyis man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'd al-maut. That's true raja. That's true hope in Allah. Because when the person is on that path, then they hope in Allah. Oh Allah, forgive my mistakes. Oh Allah, forgive my shortcomings. Oh Allah, I could do a lot better, but I'm falling short. Whereas the second case is the sad case. So Imam al-Laqani rahimahullah says, and Allah alone do I hope in acceptance, nafi'an biha muridan, and that He will give benefit thereby to the seeker of, let me read the English. From God alone I seek its acceptance, and am hopeful of its benefits, and desirous of a divine reward for its effort. So Allah is an-nafi', He's the one that gives benefit. And then muridan fi thawab, seeking, desiring a divine reward. And then here tami'an is used, but it means rajian. So because tama' is linguistically it's the negative hope, but here the Imam means the positive hope. So positive tama'in with the taking of the means, and the commentators clarify this. It could also mean that I hope that Allah will accept it while benefiting those that seek the thawab. so that's the intro. And now the second section. فكل من كلف شرعا وجب عليه أن يعرف ما قد وجب لله والجائز والممتنع ومثل ذا لرسله فاستمع. The legal ruling of Tawheed and why it is essential. So it translates as anyone who is accountable in sacred law is obliged to know the necessary attributes of God, as well as what is conceivable and inconceivable for him. These same must be known about his messengers, alayhimus salam jami'an, so be attentive. So, inshallah, we'll learn these, and overall, these comprise 50 tenets of faith. Okay, these comprise 50 tenets of faith because there's 20 necessary attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 20 necessary attributes. And then for each of those necessary attributes is entailed, the opposite is impossible for Allah. So therefore there are 20 impossible or inconceivable attributes. So you learn the 20 necessary, and then immediately you know the opposites, which are inconceivable. So that's 40. And then there's one that's conceivable for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 41. And then with respect to the messengers, alayhimus salam jami'an, there's 4 necessary attributes. And then by extension, you learn the 4 opposites, which are inconceivable, that's 8. And then there's 1 conceivable, 9, plus 41 is 50. So inshallah, that's the subject matter of the Jawhara that we will learn. Now, this is the first obligation, is to know these 50 tenets of faith, right? And the purpose of this science is to define these contents of the faith, and then secondly, to show that what we believe in is logically conceivable, right? That we don't believe in anything logically absurd or inconceivable, and that there's even Quranic precedent for this, that Allah Ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that Allah does not tax a soul beyond its capacity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not tax a soul beyond its capacity. And so it would be beyond our capacities to believe in something that's a logical contradiction. Okay, it would be beyond our mental capacity to believe in something that's a logical contradiction. And so what's known in logic as the law of non-contradiction, that's basically what is used in this science. That has to be, that's foundational. And then, so to define the contents of faith, to show that what we believe in is logically conceivable and not absurd or contradictory, and then to show reasons for these beliefs, and so the proofs, to show rational proofs, what's called the burhan, which is the demonstrative proof in logic for each of our tenets of faith. But having said that, it sounds very complicated, but every Muslim knows these. Okay, basically it's intuitive for every Muslim. Any Muslim with a working relationship with the Quran, they know that Allah is all-powerful. They know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-knowledgeable, omniscient, omnipotent, that He wills, masha'Allah, that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills is what exists, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so these attributes that we'll discuss in detail, alhamdulillah, it's intuitive for the Muslim, but it's important to have it delineated and organized in a way just to make sure that everyone has this foundation, and to clarify any misconceptions that might be in the mind of the believer. So he says, فَكُلُّ مَنْ كُلِّفَ شَرْعًا. Now this is important, taklif, that anyone that is accountable, so morally accountable or legally accountable so shar'an, he says, legally accountable according to the sacred law. So the definition of a mukallaf, a person that is morally responsible or accountable based on the sharia, is al-baligh, al-aqil, alladhi balaghathu ad-da'wa. And some will add salim al-hawas. So 4 things: that they're a sane adult, okay, aqil, sane, baligh, adult, alladhi balaghathu ad-da'wa, that the invitation of a prophet has reached them, and then salim al-hawas, that they have sound senses. Okay, they have sound senses, which means that a person, so let's look at each one, who that excludes. Sound senses excludes someone that's both blind and deaf. If a person, la qadarallah, is both blind and deaf, then there's no way they can receive the message. So they would be exempted. Okay. And then, so that's that. Al-aqil, a sane person. So person with the type of, retardation or insane person, that they would be exempted. They're not responsible. Sharan. There's nothing obligatory on them, in according to the Sharia. The baligh, an adult. The adult, they have to be adults. So children that die. Okay, children of any faith, children of any cultural, children of any geographic location, children according to Islam, according to Ahl Sunnah, if they die, then they have divine amnesty. They are saved. Okay, they go to paradise. And then the other one, the fourth one, is alladhi balaghathu da'wah, the one that the message has reached. So this is this is one of the differences between the Asharis and the Maturidis. The Maturidis say that a person of sound intellect, an adult of sound intellect, that the intellect alone is enough to make recognition of Tawheed an obligation. Okay, the intellect alone is enough, as a sufficient basis by which a person is obliged to believe in Allah and His oneness. That's the Maturidi position, and the Ahl Sunnah traditionally is the Asharis and the Maturidis. So with also the Atharis, according to some. But so the Maturidis, they say that it's wajib aqlan, it's necessary to recognize Allah and His oneness by the intellect. And the reason they say is because of all these ayat. They say it's just overwhelming. Okay, it's just overwhelming how many signs there are. It's something that's intuitive in the human fitrah, in the human soul, in the human, the natural way Allah Ta'ala has made the human being. And so if a person's on a deserted island and they're sane and they're adult, then they're responsible to believe in Allah and His oneness. The Asharis, which in this text is by Imam Laqani rahimahullah was Ashari, they say no, that a person on a deserted island or in a situation where they did not get the message, even though the signs are clear and they should believe in Allah, and they very well could believe in Allah, they're not morally accountable, they're not legally accountable based on the intellect alone. That what's the basis of accountability is receiving the message. Once the Prophet has come and has shown the proof with the mu'jiza, with the miracle, and the person now recognizes that this is truth, at that point they are responsible. So a person that has received the sound message, now at that point they are mukallaf. Okay, they are mukallaf. They must believe. So now this brings up an interesting point, because you have the Ahl al-Fatra. The Ahl al-Fatra are those that died before the Prophet came. Okay, those that lived between the time periods of two prophets, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, alayhim salam jami'an. So, according to this, according to the Sunni definition of a mukallaf, they're not mukallaf, because they never got the da'wah, they never got the invitation of a prophet. And so they say explicitly that they are Ahlul Fatra Najun, that the people of the time between prophets are saved. And they say, وَإِن بَدَّلُوا وَإِن غَيَّرُوا وَإِن عَبَدُوا الْأَصْنَامِ. They say even if they change the religion, even if their previous religion, even if they were of a distorted dispensation or distorted understanding of a previously true religion, and even if they worshipped idols, and if they did not get the message of the Prophet ﷺ, then they are exempted. They have divine amnesty. So then one of the proofs of this, Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, Surah Al-Isra, verse 15, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا, that we were not going to punish until and unless we sent a messenger. We were not going to punish, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا, until and unless we sent a messenger. And so now this would of course include the parents of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, and so contrary to what classically would be considered an aberrant shadh opinion that is, I think, popularized today, the classical Sunni position is that the parents of the beloved ﷺ are saved. They are in paradise. And this would, by extension, go to all. They actually say that all of the forefathers and foremothers of our beloved ﷺ, they're also all saved, because they were people of Tawheed. Okay, so now, some will say, well, there's a hadith, a sahih hadith, in which the man came and the Prophet ﷺ said, my father and your father are in the fire, right? My father and your father are in the fire. So there's a lengthy discussion of reconciling that with this, but part of it is that the ayah in the Quran in Surah Al-Isra, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا, that we were not going to punish until we sent a messenger. This is what's called qat'i. It's called a definitive text, because the Quran is mutawatir. Okay, we know with absolute certainty that the Prophet ﷺ said these words. That mutawatir means that there's so many chains of independent chains of transmission that it becomes incontestable. Incontestable, multiple chain transmission. That there's too many chains, independent chains of narration. So it's qat'i, it's definitive. We know for a fact. The entire Quran is mutawatir. So anything in the Quran is definitive in its strength. Whereas the hadith, there are some hadith that are mutawatir, but most of them are called ahad, which means that they don't have enough chains to be fully definitive. So they're probabilistic. And they could, even if it's a sahih hadith, which means it's very, very likely that the Prophet ﷺ said it, and we believe that he said it, ﷺ, it's still not qat'i, it's still not definitive 100%. And so if there's a conflict between a definitive qat'i text and a non-definitive dhanni text, then which one would take precedence? And which one would be the lens by which you understand the other one? And so the ulama said, well, okay, this is qat'i, that Allah said we will not destroy people until we will not punish anyone until we send a messenger. So the hadith now has to be interpreted properly in that light. It has to be interpreted properly in that light. So what's the interpretation? Well, in the Arabic language, we know that the word father can be used for paternal uncle. In the Arabic language, we know that the word father can be used for paternal uncle. And so we know for a fact that the Prophet ﷺ, his uncle, like Abu Lahab, it's qat'i, it's definitive that Abu Lahab is punished. And so he could have been referring to him. And so we're not going to override a definitive text by a non-definitive text that's open to many interpretations. Okay? And then the other issue that's brought up is that because we believe that all the forefathers and foremothers of the Prophet ﷺ are saved, is that what about Azir? That in the Quran, Ibrahim a.s., he's calling his father Azir to Tawheed, and Azir is rejecting Tawheed in the Quran. So what's the reconciliation? Same thing, paternal uncle, that the word ab in Arabic can be used for the paternal uncle, that the Arabs use the word ab for paternal uncle. And so we believe that that would be the uncle of Ibrahim a.s. and not his father. And then just to clarify, lastly, and then we'll do a Q&A inshallah, that wajaba, jaiza, mumtani'a. So these three terms, it's important to understand that necessary, conceivable, and inconceivable. So this has to do with logically, that logically something is necessary. The definition is al-wajib ma la yutasawwar fil aqli adamuhu. That which its non-existence cannot be conceived of in the intellect. The wajib, the necessary, is ma la yutasawwaru fil aqli adamuhu. That which its non-existence cannot be conceived of in the mind. Okay? The jaiz ma yasihhu fil aqli wujuduhu wa adamuhu. Conceivable is that which you can conceive of it existing and you can conceive of it not existing. Mumtani' or mustahil is ma la yutasawwar fil aqli wujuduhu. That which its existence cannot be conceived of. That which its existence cannot be conceived of. So, an example would be, for example, in creation, something to be moving and still at the same time. So, is it conceivable logically for something to be both moving and still at the same time, and from the same perspective? Not like we're on Earth, but the Earth is rotating, so I'm still right now, but I'm moving. No, from the same perspective, looking from the same perspective, can something be moving and still at the same time? What do you think? Try to make it happen in your mind. Can't happen. Sorry? in your mind. But you can't though, even in your mind. Can something be a square and a circle at the same time? Okay, so that's what's meant here by necessary, conceivable, inconceivable. And this is different from a law of nature. This is really important. You have to make note of this. This is different from a law of nature. So what we're talking about is the hukum aqli. It's logical propositions or logical judgments. Can you conceive of it or not? If it's conceivable, it's possible. If it's inconceivable, okay, it's mustahil. And if it's wajib, then it has to be. You can't conceive of it not being there. Whereas a law of nature is what's called a hukum adi, which is just a normative or empirical judgment. So for example, this pen cap, if I let go, what's going to happen? Probably, right? Okay, so the falling of this is a hukum adi. It's just a normative, empirically tested judgment that gravity caused this to fall, or this pen cap falls. When I let go, the pen cap falls. But can I conceive? Is it imaginable that if I let go, it goes up? In the mind, is it conceivable? Does it entail a contradiction by definition? No. So it's what's called a hukum adi. It's a normative judgment. Okay? Which means that's a law of nature. And the basis of miracles is defying laws of nature. Okay? The basis of a miracle is that the hukum adi can be broken. And one of the things that, to me, that's interesting is in colloquial Arabic, if you say something as adi, like hada adi, it means it's not a big deal. Shay adi, yani, it's not a big deal. And that's how we view, the laws of nature. Because there's people out there, there's philosophers, they say that they conflate the two. They say a law of nature is wajib aqlan. They say a law of nature is rationally necessary. We say no. It's empirically necessary, it happens every day, but it's not rationally necessary. We can conceive. And so when Sayyidina Musa a.s. strikes the Red Sea and water goes up like this, we don't have a problem. It's just water falling is adi. It's not a big deal. Allah creates it. Allah Ta'ala told the fire to be bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim, cool and peaceful for Ibrahim a.s. And Ibrahim a.s. was tearing in the fire, living therein for some time. Angels were coming, the Mufassirin say angels were coming, visiting him. He was having a good time, mashallah, spending time with the angels. It was so big that they couldn't even go up to it to put him in. They had to catapult him, alayhi salam. And he was 16 years old. 16 years old. And they couldn't even go up to the fire. It was too huge. It was like a little village that they'd use a catapult, put him in. And then he's catapulted. And then on the way, Jibreel alayhi salam comes to him and says, can I help you? Can I do anything for you? Do you want my help? Jibreel, the archangel, the angel of revelation, who's entrusted with divine speech coming to the world, says, can I help you? He says, from you? No. From you? You're a means. You're a sabab. I only, hasbi Allah. Hasbi Allah. Allah is my sufficiency. Allah is my sufficiency. And so Allah Ta'ala tells the fire, be cool and peaceful. So it's a hukum adi. Fire burning is a hukum adi. It's really not a big deal. So as opposed to a hukum aqli, a logical necessity, then that's really the foundation of our epistemology. And it's really important to separate the two. Okay, it's really important to separate the two. Like one of the ways you can think about it is, if they can make a movie of it, then it's conceivable. So they make like imagination, right? And they make movies of all sorts of things, and people flying, and water going different directions, and fire not burning. And they do that in cinema, right? So it proves that it's conceivable, because they can make a film out of it. As opposed to they can never put a square circle on a film. They can never make something moving and still at the same time from the same perspective on a film. It's just logically inconceivable. So if there's any questions, then we'll try to address them, inshallah. Oh, yes, the mic.
I can pass the mic. Brother Idris. If there's any written questions, please pass them to the center.
Asalaamu Alaikum.
Alaikum Assalam wa rahmatullah.
I wanted to ask you about when you said about being conceited. you said, what you said, arrogancy, and the Nafs, right? So both of these things can happen to you at the same time. Am I right?
Both of what things, sorry?
The Nafs can come and conceit can come into your spirit or soul.
Uh-huh.
Being conceited and reason I'm asking, I have an anger problem. I admit that I have an anger problem. I have it, I guess, where I grew up. I wasn't born Muslim. I'm a convert. And I didn't become Muslim until I was in my early 40s, maybe. So some things in Islam, being humble, where I grew up at, was kind of being considered to being weak. But I have always been humble for some reason, to a certain point, until I think someone is stepping in my space, or someone, like you said, someone you think, Imam said that somebody, you thinking you sold this and that. I never thought that. People put me in that category, But I like what you said about that, because that's what I be fighting sometimes, especially the Nafs, Right. Yeah. But I think you cannot control anything until you. No, I don't care what it is. Until you realize you have a problem with it. If you all arrogant and think you like what you said, being arrogant, and you don't think you have a problem with something, you'll never become humble about it.
Right.
It just won't happen.
Right.
With me, I've been blessed. Didn't no Muslim bring me to Islam. I ain't never picked up a Quran. I didn't even talk to nobody about Islam. Malcolm, Malik el-Shabazz, the first book I ever read. So when I came to Islam, I have a lot of things I'm still fighting. But I realize that there are problems, I think that's the biggest blessing I have.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
But I really, really appreciated what you said about that. I needed to hear that.
Alhamdulillah.
Exactly here, brother. Asalaamu.
Alaikum Assalam wa rahmatullah. So real quick, this question, what is the application for the conditions of being mukallaf, accountable? Is this about salvation? You mentioned also being morally and legally accountable. Are these distinct? So no, that's the same. I was just giving different ways it's translated. Mukallaf means morally accountable, or you could say legally by Islamic law accountable. It's the same thing. It is about salvation, and the application is just what we mentioned, that any sane adult who has sound senses and the da'wah has reached them, then they are now a sound presentation, an uncorrupted presentation of the message. Then they have to make a decision. They have to make a decision, and they are responsible at that point for their decision. So I hope that answers that.
Asalaamu Alaikum. When we said that the qalb and the nafs, the heart and the ego, are from one faculty, what is that one faculty? Is that the ruh?
So Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he basically says that it's the same faculty, the person, but just whether he's directing it to intelligibles, then it's the aql. If it's the lower traits, it's the nafs. If it's to higher meanings, it's the qalb. And even higher meanings is the ruh. He discusses that in his kitab Ajaib al-Qalb. That's his he says that they all refer to this latifa. It's this subtlety in the human being that is the person himself. And that's that's also important to make a distinction, because he mentions also that a lot of times when in the discourse of talking about combating the nafs, fighting, it can be translated as ego, that the meaning of ego in that context is every bad trait of the person. Every bad trait of the person. Any trait that contradicts slavehood to God. That's the nafs. The nafs is any trait that contradicts slavehood to God. So combating the nafs means you're not combating your own soul, you're combating your evil traits. And then, inshallah, if those traits are held at bay, then the soul can really be, it's a beautiful, it's us, it's who we are, and it's not negative inherently, it's a positive thing. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, they ask you about this, the soul. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, it's from the command of my Lord. So it's something Rabbani, it's something from Allah. And so it's a positive trait. Everyone has a value and dignity, but we all have our baggage that we need to deal with and purify. So that the soul, the nafs refers to all of those negative traits. Wallahu a'lam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So, you said for the people who haven't received, a messenger or a prophet, that they have divine amnesty. So, are we saying that essentially they get a free pass?
Sorry, for which people? What?
People in the time period between.
Yeah, they're saved. They're saved. They go to paradise. Because they never had a prophet to call
whatever.
them, despite whatever.
Okay. So, doesn't that somehow contradict the notion of fairness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everyone for the same purpose and He has put us here for the same purpose?
So, that's a loaded question, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's His kingdom and He does what He wills, and you'd have to go into what does it mean to be unfair, and how do they define dhulm. Dhulm means wada' shay fi ghayr mahallihi, placing something in other than its proper place. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one that places everything, and what defines its proper place is where Allah chooses to place it. So, and Allah has hikmah though. You have to always remember that we can't perceive the deeper meanings of things. We can only turn to Allah. We read the Quran and we try to understand as much as possible. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hikmah, and He has hikmah and lutf. He has wisdom and gentleness that permeates this creation. So it might be lutf jali or lutf khafi. It might be an obvious, apparent, subtle gentleness, or a hidden, unapparent gentleness, but it's there. So why certain people where they are, and this goes back to the free will predestination issue. Yeah. All of these are tied in. And inshallah, we'll try to tap into some the surface of some of these issues. But these are at the end of the day,
The reason why I ask is I've heard that there are people who will be tested in some way in the day of judgment. Is that a difference of opinion, or is that?
Well, it doesn't refer to the Ahlul Fatra.
Okay.
Yeah. And there, some of these issues, there are various opinions, but what I'm presenting is the majority Sunni position, according to these scholars, the Sunni scholars, the Ashari. No.
We'll go to a written question, then we'll come back to you.
Allahu Akbar. MashaAllah, loaded questions. Yeah, okay, real quickly related. Does the definition of a mukallaf under Ashari aqidah encompass those who have received the message in a distorted form, Fox News, etc.? Fox News distorted? Right? Most humans have heard something of Islam but have not heard unadulterated truth about Islam. That's a good point, And the da'wah, is it the da'wah if it's distorted? Right? Is it the message if it's distorted? One of the principles in logic that, inshallah, it's good to know, and al-hukm ala shay' far'un an tasawwurihi. Al-hukmu ala shay'in far'un an tasawwurihi. That a judgment regarding any matter is predicated upon a full conception of what's entailed in that matter. A judgment or a statement about anything is predicated or based upon a full tasawwur, a full, proper, accurate depiction of what that thing is. So if someone says, what's your opinion on whatever, this particular philosophy of 8th century China? I'm like, I don't have a tasawwur. I don't know what it is. Like, let me study it. Let me try to understand, grasp it, internalize it, have a clear conception of what it is, and then I can say whether I agree or not. So one of the biggest problems in just general discourse today, in news, in media, is the fact that everyone's making hukum without a tasawwur. Everyone's giving their opinion and judgment with zero or negative tasawwur, of no conception whatsoever, or a completely false conception. So similarly, the responsibility in taklif is predicated upon a correct tasawwur, because otherwise it's not the thing. An inaccurate conception is not an accurate conception, so it's not that. And Imam al-Ghazali in the Faisal al-Tafriqa, he talks about, he says that there's probably many scores of people in all these non-Muslim nations that will be in paradise because they haven't received a correct version, a correct depiction of Islam. So Allah knows best, and in the end of the day, it's Allah knows exactly who has the tasawwur and who doesn't, right?
Inshallah, we have time for one last question. I believe the brother in the front had a question. So, maybe a last question.
So, when we were talking about the maqam of the Prophet I've heard this critique before, and especially people who come from a Christian background sometimes, where you have this elevation of Jesus, and then you hear the Prophet being praised in a similar manner, where it's like he is the door to Allah, but sometimes it's like, where do you draw the line between he's a bab? So I guess what I'm trying to ask is our differentiation with the Prophet obviously has this maqam, and you cannot not believe in him and enter Jannah, at least after Islam, to a certain extent. So is our differentiation then in Christianity is that they also have this elevation of Jesus, and you have that same principle of you need to, but with them it's the shirk with Allah, that he is the one in three, whereas for us he is this great bab, but he's totally separated from what the bab is leading to.
So that actually is exactly this question that I was about to do. Some Muslims think that the overt veneration of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ compromises Tawheed, whereas the Jawhara begins with the praise of Muhammad ﷺ, the ultimate embodiment of Tawheed and keeper of the divine secret. I don't think I said that. How and where does this originate? Can you elaborate on prophecy and Tawheed, that they are not in contradiction but necessary? Okay, so same question. So Imam Busiri, he says very clearly in the Burda that دعمت دعته النصارى في نبيهم واحكم بما شئت مدحا فيه واحتكمي وانسب إلى ذاتي ما شئت من شرف وانسب إلى قدري ما شئت من عظمي. That leave aside what the Christians say about their prophet. Leave aside what the Christians say about the Prophet Isa alayhi salam. And then once you've done that, you can say whatever you want about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you can ascribe to his entity as much honor as you want, and you can ascribe to his majesty as much greatness as you want. Okay? So it's a very clear criteria, and this is a criteria for people that get confused about the Burda, for people that get confused about, some of what was said today. Anytime in the context, of a classical Sunni context, and then the Prophet ﷺ is venerated, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is the lens. The lens is that it's shirk and association of anything to do with divinity is completely categorically negated. Da'mat da'atun nasara fi nabihim, completely leave aside what they said about their prophet. That we believe the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and all the prophets are khalqullah. They are the creation of Allah, and Allah is one, and Allah is khaliqu kulli shay. He is the creator of every single thing. And he is and everything other than Allah is khalqullah. Hada khalqullah. This is the creation of Allah. And in and of itself, no matter what it is in creation, and even the blessed prophets, all of them, alaykum salam jami'an, and even our beloved master, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no matter what they are, in and of themselves, they have no intrinsic. It's all Allah Ta'ala creating. It's all the creation of God. That in and of themselves, not everything is just khalq. It's created, and it's dependent, and it's in need. And it's contingent, and it's temporal, and it's dependent, right? Whereas Allah is absolute, infinite, independent, non-contingent, etc., etc. So that is the understanding in aqidah. And Imam Busiri, as he says, once that's done, khalas. Within khalq now, ahlan wa sahlan. Ahlan wa sahlan. Because no matter how much we praise the Prophet ﷺ, no matter how much we venerate him, no matter how much we do whatever we do, no matter how much the entire ummah does it, no matter how much every single ummah does it, the whole creation could be doing it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't match one instance of Allah's salat on him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. For Allah to send salat on him, khalas. For Allah to say, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ, we have raised your remembrance. So don't worry, those that are worried. Seriously, those that are worried that there's a little too much praise, it doesn't match Allah's praise. I guarantee you it doesn't match it. Just relax. Just totally relax. It's okay. It's okay. Keep your cool. Keep your kufi on. Keep your jubba on. Alhamdulillah. We're not saying don't praise Allah. We started off Alhamdulillah ala siratihi. Allah, we praise Allah, we thank Allah. Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. The praises for Allah. But we respect the means in creation. And the greatest means that we can perceive is the best of creation, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So, he's the best of the creation. So I hope that kind of clarifies it, inshallah. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And that, real quickly, this question, I wanted to follow up on the question of He is beautiful and loves beauty. Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. How do we define beauty? It's whatever is related to the Prophet ﷺ. That's the answer. Yeah, that's the answer. If it approximates him, ﷺ, it's beautiful. Does it imply that everything He has created has an aspect of beauty to it? Yes, because it's originally Allah's creation. But there's evil in the world, and we'll deal with that inshallah in the future. But from the fact that so there's ugliness in the world too, but whatever approximates virtue, Quranic virtue, prophetic virtue is what's beautiful. So inshallah, alhamdulillah. Okay, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad an-nabiyyi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.